Oh. Hello, everyone. I've been talking to myself for the last few minutes, so hello. Oh, sorry, I've been busy preparing lots of Christmas things today, and I was sure I'd press the button, and then it turned out I hadn't. And I didn't realise it until someone said, Dr. C's late, and I thought I was chatting with everyone. So, hello, everyone. Oh well. So, hello, DM Carter. Hello, Peter Dawson. Hello, John Shea. Calvin Gasberg. John Shea, you're listening to Bilgepumps 29. Right. So, just to clarify, before I get into everything, I'm going to quickly go over competition details at the beginning of this discussion. Hello, Calvin Gasberg. Merry Christmas. Hello, Tien Wang. Hello, Jane Liff. Now, as you all know, please be polite today because my little cousin's listening, and this is the cousin who maintains the good list here. So, I have an important tasks to do, let's say. There are many important roles that a slightly portly, bearded gentleman, surprisingly athletic bearded gentleman, has to get up to on the 24th and 25th of December. Do try and keep up this year, NORAD. Do try and keep up. Hello, Carmen Gasberg. Hello, Tien Wang. Hello, Jane Worth. Tien Wang, aka Golden Eagle. Hello. In car. Hello. Jeff Beeler. Hello. I have my convoys handy in case Dr. Clark starts talking about gas turbines. Okay, so I have a reason for that, and I went back and checked. And the books I use sometimes for these classes are my dad's notes, because when he was going through his apprenticeship, he made notes on everything, and that was part of the training process. And one of them was the Australia class. Unfortunately, what I thought were the correct things, and I'm still not sure where someone else got that from on Wikipedia, because I didn't get it from Wikipedia. I got it from my dad's bad handwriting. Instead of him actually doing on this one, on every other one he's done it, not a copy down. On this one, he's worked out a period, far more capable gas turbine for it that he has lovingly drawn out. And someday I will, when I have copied up enough of my dad's work into legible handwriting for everyone else, do a presentation of his notebooks, because it would be something cool to do that no one else would have seen, and it would be really interesting. But that's going to be a while off, because considering I'm still getting his handwriting confused, and I've been dealing with it for over 30 years, yeah, it's going to have to be checked first. I think the person who's going to have to type it all up will probably be my poor mum. So send black magic. That's the bribery for her. Jeff Miller, Happy New Year's Eve. Yeah. Hello, Ian Al Richard, Nautical Wolf, Shane F, Nick Ashwell Rice, Ian Carr, hello, Bijan. Hello, Thomas Vanderveld, The Plebiscide, Stafford Thomas, hello. So, Thomas, it's been received. Yours was one of the first submissions received for the competition. Thomas Vanderveld, ships in 1920. Very interesting in terms of radio technology evolution. It was a watershed year by any means in that area. Yes, and actually, this is my plan for going on. Okay? Every year, the one before Christmas, whether it's Christmas Eve, what it is, will be about the ships of 100 years prior to that day. Sort of the ones 100 years, the previous year. Because I think it'd be a nice thing to have going as a Christmas tradition, to have a discussion about it every year, and look at the ships which were 100 years ago. I have to admit, I did try and get one for every month, and I failed. because in a couple of months there just wasn't anything interesting produced. On Richard, waiting for Rudolph for guidance is my guess. Well, you call him Rudolph. I might call him Raleigh. Old Richard, NORAD has detected a black man cycling North Pole. Yeah. Hello, RA4. Hello, Shane F. Hello, Matt Day. I don't think I've seen you before. Hello, Eric C8. Haven't seen you before. Hello. Eric Kaufman, I would like to say that I've just got the Minotaur in World of Warships and it could use some more steel from any time frame. Yeah. Hello, GC Sujin. And Jellingworth. Hello. Hello, Sean Mack. Hello, Michael Rose. Hello, Gordon Collins. Hello, Aviator Enterprise and Constant Drowsiness. Hello. Nice shirt. Thank you, Eric Kaufman. At least now I know you guys can all see me. And girls. Hello, Flatback Copper. And... oh, hello. Admiral Zeta Wolf. Hello. Eric Kaufman. Athletic. Fight Drac in a medieval sword fight. Here's the other similarity between me and Drac that none of you realise. I was at the schools I was lucky enough to be a scholarship boy at. I learnt fencing and shooting from about the age of 5 to the age of 18. So me and Drac share not just a passion for the Navy and naval history, but we're also both fairly handy when it comes to sharp metal objects. So it would actually be quite interesting us actually getting into using swords on each other. Merry Christmas to Indianapolis. Mad Day, are they worse than 17th century Secretary Hand? Honestly, it's worse than my handwriting, and my handwriting is legendary. I mean, literally. I have students who have never seen How I Met Your Mother, who have cracked Barney Stinson-style legendary jokes about my handwriting. And they didn't realize why I was laughing until I told them they had to go watch How I Met Your Mother. So this is how bad my handwriting is. I have introduced a whole new generation to How I Met Your Mother. We can be sad and disturbed at the same time about that. Mm-hmm. And really fluff. This year, 100 years ago thing might take some time to get really interesting stuff. Well, that isn't until you realise that 1920 was the year that HMS Hood commissioned. And USS Tennessee BB-43. And I do think the US Navy set that up to rhyme because, let's be honest, Tennessee 43. The US Navy knew what they were doing. California is 44. Tennessee is 43. Hello, Tuning 343. 3434, I mean. And Juno 111. Hello. Woke up to country Christmas carols and notifications that Dr. Clark is live. So you're a proficient flencer. What weapon? Saber and epee. Well, my two. I was far more saber than epee, but at my school, everyone had to do the drills with the epee first, and then you would go specialize in whatever was your more specialist. So some would go and do advanced epee, some would go do saber, and I always forget the third one we had. I played trombone, bass guitar, epee, saber, and, well, thanks to my mum and school, I'm fairly decent with a rifle. No, I wasn't programmed from the get-go to be a naval historian. I just came out that way. Sounds random. Are you serious? I love the old longbow. I mean, the old ones. Won a couple of medals when I was a kid. I lost them sad enough. And riding horses for shooting from 16 or 7-year-old. Great youth. And archery. I did that as well at my junior school. I didn't do it in my secondary school, but I did do archery at my junior school, which explains to an extent the shoulders. Shumac could also do major refits. I might do that as time goes on. I wasn't thinking about that this time, but you know, I think I will probably wander that way. As you can see, I was doing this, putting this all together, and worry about getting a ship so much, I forgot to update. Because I've created a standard stencil, unfortunately, that standard stencil for some reason doesn't update the date. Unless I remind it to update the date. Otherwise, it leaves as Tuesday the 20th of October. So, you know when I set up the stencil. I don't know. Right. 17 minutes. Now, first things first, I'm going to get into Bilgepumps episode 29 because we've had some submissions in already, including Stafford Thomas. It looks lovely, and there are a couple of others who have sent them in, but they I have a feeling they'd be less comfortable than Stafford would about having them mentioned live. If you don't mind being mentioned live, put that in your submission, and I will mention you quite happily. You've already submitted. But the thing is, the email is in the description down below, and this is what episode 29 of Bilgepumps was looking at. We were being very careful when we put it together, in that we wanted something that everyone could contact us directly on, and it wouldn't get lost or wouldn't overburden other volunteers and would just come straight to us. So we set up a specific dedicated email that can be accessed by me, Drac, or Jamie. So all three of us can get in there. And that email is literally for competitions. We are going to be... This is the first one we're doing for January, but we are planning on doing further competitions. And the idea is that people who are passionate or people who are experts, but they're not really the sort of ones that we will find out about, already know about, or people in Discord who produce these beautiful documents where they have become what I call passion experts in something, because it's their really, really passionate topic. So they have really investigated it tremendously. If you want to come and talk about it, you are more than welcome to. We just want a proposal on a PDF so we can read them all. Our plan is to do 2 shows in January like this, have 1 or 2 guests per show, and just see how it goes. And if people like it as an idea, we'll have it do something similar, or maybe something evolve from that again later in the year. But basically, the idea is to really involve you, to really bring in the absolutely amazing people we have listening to Bilgepumps to be part of Bilgepumps. And, you know, Dan Freeman might want to sort of write something in. Sean Mack might want to put something in. Carl Gasberg or Aaron Fluke. Engaging strategy certainly should be putting something in. You know, engaging strategy. If there is anyone, and hello, Merry Christmas, engaging strategy, who should be putting in an article, putting in a suggestion, it should be them. Because the whole idea is that this is to give people a chance to come on Bilgepumps and have a chat. And as you can see, as we've done with Sal, Commander Salamander, and various other people in the past, if you want to maintain your anonymity, you're more than welcome to. We can work with that. but you have to be happy to come on and talk about your ideas. So, are you serious? That's gonna. Aller Libra in Sphere. Merry Christmas from Germany. Merry Christmas. I will have to come up with a shorter way of pronouncing your name. Yeah, the saber kind of suits me. I'm big and I can whack very, very hard. Plus, the fact that you had a nice metal shield you could also whack people with, as well as the sword, really meant the saber game to me. I was also quite happy when they allowed me to occasionally experiment with the saber and the little dirk fighting knife that I was sometimes allowed to. We did some training with from about sixth form, and quite enjoyed having that in the other hand. Tony343. I wouldn't mind some extra longbow knowledge on Nagato. She is an enigma for me. One, it's the most powerful battleship in existence, and on topics of Washington exceptions, but also very obsolete in the 40s. Well, wait till you see some of the other ones we're talking about today. Nagato is here, as is Tennessee. Mike, I would pay to see Clark and Drac in plate armor dueling. Could be funny. Skeet shooting, Dr. Clark? Do you know what? I have done some shooting on the lines of the sheet skeet shooting, usually target, but I have done some clay pigeon and some clay rabbit shooting. Hello, Yogi Khan. King's Root. I'm passing on the contest. I wouldn't add anything to the conversations. That's the thing. If it's your area of specialty, we will make sure you got to talk. And, of course, the other benefit of it is you do get to sit down for an hour or maybe 90 minutes and have a chat with me, Drac, and Jamie. Which could be a lot of fun. That could be the incentive for some people, I think. Judging by 50% of the responses we've got, that is the incentive. Eric Allen. Dude, this sounds like a great idea, or it'll blow up on your face, but I love that idea. Well, that's the thing. It will either go very, very well, or it'll be so bad we'll never repeat it. Sav Thompson, Sav, you definitely didn't send too much. It was just right, and it's already causing Drac to have many, many ideas going through his head. Oh, Richard, my expertise is steam propulsion, which would likely bore people to death. Would it? Let's be honest, steam propulsion is the art of using what is one of the most dangerous substances known to mankind. Highly pressurized steam. It's a thing which can literally shred all the organic matter off your bones in seconds if exposed, if you get a break in the wrong place in the piping, to power a ship. Catapults and all. Yeah, steam propulsion is pretty darn interesting when you want to talk about it. King's, my ability to communicate verbally has been basically destroyed by my health problems. That's annoying. It would be fun though, King's Rope. Sorry, I missed it. What was the competition? It's been announced in episode 29. And basically the idea is anyone who's interested in coming on, we're going to be doing 2 special episodes in January of Bilgepumps. And it's for people who aren't regular experts, aren't massively widely known, or who it's their passion topic rather than being their working topic. And the idea is, like Stafford has done and a few others have done, to send in a written submission as a PDF to Bilgepumpsofcimsec at gmail.com. And the ones we like the most, me, Drac, and Jamie, will invite on the show, and we'll record, and we'll do a Bilgepumps episode review. It's either going to be a very, very good idea, or we're going to be crying by the end of it. Paul from Chicago, how do we get Kate Jameson on? Judging by how many times I've invited her and something's come up, yeah, we're going to keep trying that one. Matt Day, would there be any restriction on time period? No. The only requirement is that we can try and make it relevant to today. So, for example, if you're talking about the social issues surrounding the creation of Charles I's Navy and how it contributed to the English Civil War, that's actually a really interesting topic, because one of the debates that you often have today is how do you make sure people understand, who don't see the Navy of date, and understand how it's relevant to them. And that was a battle which Charles I lost. Now, we hope it won't end up in a civil war again, but it has big issues for today. Hello, Rick Vasa. Vasava. Right then. So, the first vessel we're going to be talking about today is USS T-1, SS-52. And I bet most of you have never heard of it. Well, I hope you haven't, because even I hadn't really heard of it till about... a good few days ago. About 3 weeks ago. Now, she was laid down as USS Schley in 1916 by the Fall River Shipbuilding Company Yard in Massachusetts. That's in Quincy, Massachusetts. By the Electric Boat. They are sort of... they were a subgroup, the Fall River Shipbuilding Company, of the Electric Boat Company, who, of course, are, to an extent, still the Americans' premier submarine manufacturers. Now, Electric Boat Company these days is called General Dynamics Electric Boat, but, you know, they're still pretty darn good. She was sponsored by Mrs. Lillian Lovey King and commissioned in the 3rd of January 1920 with Lieutenant Commander James Parker in command. She was designed the idea of creating fleet submarines. That's pretty much the US Navy's plan for a long-range reconnaissance asset. Their idea was to use submarines for long-range reconnaissance by having them position themselves pretty much off the harbors of the enemy, and when the enemy went out, report their position. So, we've already talked earlier that this is the era where radio waves are increasing, and guess what's critical to her operation? Her radio. Her entire role is defined by her ability to do radio communications. Unfortunately, she wasn't that brilliant at it. And while she's commissioned on the 30th of January 1920, she's decommissioned less than 2 years later on the 5th of December 1922 and is finally stricken in September 1930 and scrapped in 1931. However, this is because her propulsion plant, which was absolutely freaking terrible. And this is how bad it was, okay? She's actually re-engined. She goes from having New London ship engine, Nelsco's, 4-cycle 6-cylinder diesels, to having 4 10-cycle MAN diesels fitted. Yes. You always wonder, how did the Germans keep up their production of submarine engines quite so well throughout the interwar years? Well, a goodly amount of the time is thanks to the US Navy and their absolutely atrocious submarine engines, which have a habit of either being taken out and replaced with MAN engines, or in the design process, actually looking at them and going, you know what, we're going to build MAN engines under license and call them something else. Also, they also like British engines. It's kind of interesting. The US Navy alternates between German or British for their submarine engines when they are wanting them to work. Hello, Earthborn Gnome. Your student, I think it'll be a good idea. I'm looking forward to hearing the winners. Oh, cool. And let's see. Old Richard, my last plant was 1200 psi at 850 degrees Fahrenheit superheat. How's that? You do not want that to go wrong. That's basically a bomb in a tube. There is another reason I really, really like the idea of pod propulsion. It's that you have electricity running around the ship and you can minimize the number of tubes which have very, very dangerous material flowing through them. Paul from Chicago. There has to be half a dozen of grad students over at King's specializing on logistics by this point. Any chance in raiding there? We could try. Engage attorney. Is there a WR? In Carl, there were 51 US submarines before USS T-1. Yes. It's T-1 for the program. It's SS-52. Don't get me started on the US Navy's naming systems. They decided to get rid of its name and call it the T-1, even though it was SS-52. We're not going there, okay? That's just a whole nother realm of... Do you want to know? Wasn't USS T-1 the first fleet boat? Yes, it was. Saw an article on Canada's wanting 15 new ships, and the article was basically complaining at the cost of not realizing how old our ships are. That is half the trouble. People forget that. Here's the idea, okay? This is going to sound shocking, but perhaps if you want your Navy to be cheaper, instead of buying 15 ships, then waiting 20 odd years and buying 15 more, what you should do is buy 5 new ships, keep the old ones that are capable of going refitted and going as possible, and have a new one rolling in the shipyard into service, let's say every 18 months, and just keep that going until you have 15, and just keep that going. When you have one new one roll out the oldest one. Newest, oldest, and just keep it on to an 18 months, and you're producing a ship every 18 months. You'd be surprised at how cheap you could make your costs for maintenance and everything go if you have a new ship rolling off the line every 18 months to keep your fleet up. It's amazing what constant work does for producing high-quality employment. That also reduces the cost of the ships. Engagement. Is there a set of guidelines written down anywhere about what exactly you want for a Bilgepumps fix? Nope. It's completely up to you. It's going to be what takes our fancy. We have literally left it as bare bones as possible. The only requirement we do is that it's written, sent into that email, and is in PDF form, and preferably written in English so all three of us can understand it. Otherwise, Drac has to do the translations, and that can take forever. So, as this has got to be done by the 10th of January, that's going to be the submission date, and then we're hoping to have first one in to record some point later that week. Yeah. English helps. And it's been a submarines cheaper than cruisers. The idea was that basically this could do the reconnaissance which a cruiser couldn't do. In that you wouldn't have a cruiser sitting straight off a naval enemy shipyard or port, because aircraft and air patrols would detect it and it would get hounded to everything. Cruisers are great for doing oceanic control. They're not great for slipping off a shipyard at this point. There's far too many bombers that can come out from there that eventually the stream bombers will win. I'm now raised back. Good afternoon. I didn't know it was possible to have a sub that didn't see combat have a shorter service life than a literal combat ship. Yep. So this is the other lesson from this class. All of you who think the literal combat ship is the worst procurement in the history of the US Navy, and in fact, I can point to worse ships even than this. John, remember, Fairbanks Morse wasn't a thing yet. No, there were lots of things which didn't work with this idea. The engines, the radio, the hull, the pressure capability, everything. Well, 1920 is still a little early. Spark still was dominant mode, little amplification available, but the end of World War I meant finally they got mass-produced reliable vacuum tubes. Shortwave was not yet discovered, so range was directly correlated to antenna size, wavelength, and transmitter power. Submarines are disastrous antenna platforms, but in 1923 something new came. Shortwave, I know. And this one had gone before even 1923 came about. Actually, no, they did keep it around. As I said, they kept it around, so in case the radios improved enough to make it really, really work. But the trouble is, radios improved, but no. T-1, the US unable to build engine. Now, why does that not remind me of China today? Or Russia at the moment. Hi, Calhoun. All right. Shrub, ships don't age at the same rate depending on where they are stationed to operate. No. Some areas they are far more corrosive than others. Basically, if you want to ruin your ship quickly, you operate in the South Atlantic. Gentlemen, you're making too much sense to most politicians. Constant work makes no sense to a number of my colleagues here in the US regarding congressional spending. Don't get me started. Don't get me started. It's a very simple thing. Just have the production. RF4, how dare you interject logic into defense preparations? And he wants more fun? Here's the thing. If you want aircraft, if you want vehicles, if you want all these things to be produced in the UK or produced in Canada, and you want them capabilities and you want them cheap, then keep up a constant production. Don't have this glutton famine approach. It's extortionate. Because every time you have to train a whole new generation, and the first batches of the 2 or 3 batches of them are terrible. T-1, can I write in Chinese? We prefer English. As said, T-1, I'm kidding, ask. But you're more than welcome. It's basically, it's also another way of saying it's open to the world. So please, in English, because that's for all 3 of us, because our language skills are different, but you know. Rab Razorback, the Arleigh is the poster child for long production runs, and long will it continue, because honestly, the trouble is, as long as it's going, it's going to keep going. Because, frankly, any other option, you're having to go... the trouble is, for any replacement for the Arleigh Burke, and this is why they keep going for evolution to the Arleigh Burke, is that it's got to be as cost-effective to build as the Arleigh Burke, and it's not going to be, because the Arleigh Burke has been kept being built for so long. John, people here complain about how expensive one Nimitz or Ford is every couple of years versus buying half a dozen every 20 years. Trust me, you want to see that expensive, you try and buy a half a dozen every 20 years. Merry Christmas, Admiral. I'm Razorback. Dr. Clark, I think the guys from the ISS can see your tree. Hello, International Space Station, then. Hello, Dirt Squad, and... Harry Kaufman, I did my PhD in marine corrosion funded by the USN. I could tell some stories. Not sure the USN would want them out there. Probably not, judging by looking at some of them. Hello, DF. I don't think I've seen you before. LCS could have been good, just expanded scope of its role and made it not wonderful. And yeah, bad design choices and lack of corrosion protection. And, well, maybe it's just not great. Yeah. Hang it's cool if Drac can actually read Chinese. Never put that past Drac. Hello, Daniel Phillips. And hello, Pet Minotaur. Tiawang, how about countering Arleighs with 40,000 ton 21st century battleships? Ooh. Dan Phillips, the Arleigh Burke is the modern Clemson Fletcher. That seems to be US trend with destroyers. Potentially. Anyway, let's go on to our next USS ship, which is the Sapelo. Now, I picked this one because people forget them. And they're cool. But the Patoka-class fleet replenishment ships were really, really useful. Here's the thing. This is the first example of the US Navy actually being allowed and actually encouraged to think long range. Up until this point, you have the standard battleships. You have the US Navy constantly fighting everyone to actually have a fleet which could actually go a decent range. The whole purpose of the Great White Fleet was not only show the world that the US Navy could reach them and as an external thing, it was also an internal one to show the US public and the US political classes, most of all, the value of having a Navy that could do global reach. Then they had the experience of the First World War, and they realized something. Their benchmark, which had been that the Royal Navy didn't have these things, was wrong, because the Royal Navy did have a few of them, but the Royal Navy only needed a lot less than the US Navy, because what did the Royal Navy have? Yeah, you guessed it. The Royal Navy had lots of bases with infrastructure around the world and friendly ports and client states, which basically did what they told them. This all helps. It really does. So, laid down 3rd of May 1919, launched the 24th of December 1919, acquired on the 30th of January 1920, and commissioned on the 19th of February 1920. Would be decommissioned in October 1933, recommissioned in August 1940, and decommissioned again in October 1945, and finally stricken from the fleet in November 1945. Wasn't sold for scrap, though, till May 1946. 16,500 tons fully loaded. She had a top speed of 10.5 knots, a complement of 75 officers, and she carried 2 5-inch guns. Which is personally something I find quite amusing, because does anyone who is actually on this floating target want to be in the kind of scenario where you're exchanging 5-inch fire with an enemy who can fire that back at you? I mean, seriously. I've got a 5-inch gun on the front. I'm a Navy ship. No, you're not. You're a tanker. You are not something which should be engaging in any sort of scenario. In 1920, you're not talking about building them as heavy AA with a 5-inch gun. That is an anti-ship weapon. You're fitting it with 2 5-inch guns. Okay, maybe if it comes up against the Royal Navy sloop. But still. Hello, Drogo Baggins. This is the USS Sapelo. Mm-hmm. T-1, they look really small. It is really small. Carmen, this does this do one area and stop. The electrification of the railways in the UK is becoming quite a strong discussion in the chat. Jeff here, the Trimaran LCS seems to be doing better than the Freedom LCS. The latter has troublesome engines. Yes, and the Trimaran LCS has the advantage of looking so much cooler. John, we do not have enough. Did not have enough tankers to go into going into World War II. I think there were only 10 were only on hand by by March 1942, and we lost Nisha at Coral Sea. No one did. No one had enough tankers going into World War II. The Sapelo oilers replaced Cyclops. You mean Patoka class oilers? Yes, Patoka class oilers do sort of replace the colliers and do allow one to become Langley. Yeah. DF, it looks so weird with the pipe way in the back, like they cut the 2 ships in half. It's an interesting scenario. Juno 109, go toe-to-toe with a U-boat on the surface? Again, you don't need a 5-inch gun. You don't need a pair of 5-inch guns to do that. Just, no. Turning free, US probably always needs more guns. Rapid is like, the more important question is, would you rather be in a situation where you need a 5-inch and not have one? If I'm in a situation where I need a 5-inch gun and I'm in a tanker, then I'm getting in the lifeboat. Shumac, RN carriers. Yes, but they're aircraft carriers. They are, and they were called armored. They did have some level of armoring, and they were called fleet and battle carriers. So, you know, that's the point. This is a tanker. In-car, USS supply ships are part of the USN, unlike the British, where the Royal Fleet Auxiliary is a separate organisation. Royal Fleet Auxiliary is a nebulous organisation, which is part of the Admiralty and part of the Navy as a whole, but is technically a civilian branch within it, because that means it can go into neutral ports to pick up supplies. Can oiler versus sloop. My money is on the sloop. It's not as boomy as the tanker. Probably. Don't know. I suspect RN crew would love having the 5-inch guns on their tankers to engage the enemy. There is a reason we didn't allow them to have those. Dan Freeman, hello! Hello, everyone. Good evening, and Merry Christmas to all and any and all who care about such things. Just back from work. Oh, cool. Hope work went well. We've already finished discussing, but I have mentioned Bilgepumps 29 and the competition, which is in details which are in the description below. Hello, shoot me. And Inquisitor Jackknife, hello. John, American ships, tanks, trucks, and planes always need more DACA. Macros, an armed floating bomb. It's certainly an unusual concept. That's my main point. It's a tanker. Nightarian Productions, hello. It's also only capable of 10 knots. Turning 3434. Question is, how many per 50 cals does it have? None as far as were fitted at the beginning. I think they're 5-inch 50s. Jeff Beeler. Hang on, no, 51s. Earlier ones, I think. Yeah. Jeff Beeler, at 10 knots, Sapelo cannot run, she has to fight. My view, if she has to fight, then you haven't escorted her right. We are going to be talking about the Clemson class later. Perfect. Send some of them along. Sorry, I know you're going on about the 50 cals, but look at the gun at the front. There's little scenarios. What scenario do you start using that gun? And you're going to say she cannot run, so she has to fight. I know that. But it's a tanker. I don't want to fight in it. That's what I have escorting warships for. Hello, Mr. Destroyer. Can you please deal with it, please? If it gets close enough, I have to deal with it. Did you see Task Force Admiral? I don't think so, but Merry Christmas and thank you, Osprey28. Osprey28 did a very nice thing of tipping your festive historian. Thank you. And right then, now we're on to the first warship of the day, which is the Sawakaze. So, the Imperial Japanese Navy get this name for building these very light, very interesting destroyers. Well, this one isn't really that light and interesting. Consider interesting for that light for the time, but is, I would argue, very interesting. I rather like them. The Sawakazes is a Minekase class. There were 15 of these built. She was laid down in January 1918, launched in January 1919, and completed in March 1920. So they took roughly 2 years and 2 months to build her. She's only stricken from the fleet in September 1945, so serves the whole way through the Second World War. This is a ship built in commissioned in 1920 and serves the whole way through World War II, and does really quite well. In fact, I would argue is one of the better destroyers the Imperial Japanese Navy has. She does anti-submarine patrols off the entrance of Tokyo Bay, and does occasional escort runs along the coast of Japan. From December 1944, she's in training ship for the Yokosuka Anti-Submarine Warfare School, and then serves as a target vessel for the 1st Tokyo Air Corps suicide flights. During the interwar period, from 30 to 32, she was part of the Destroyer Division 2, which was assigned to the 1st Air Fleet and escorted Akagi. And she took part in various operations in the Sino-Japanese War. So Sawakaze was modified in 1939 to serve as an aircraft rescue ship. And then later than that, all her torpedo tubes are removed. But as she is built, she has a displacement of 1,366 tons in normal, or 1,676 tons in full load. She is 102.5 meters length overall. She has a beam of 9.04 meters, 9.04 meters, draft of 2.9 meters, and 38,500 shaft horsepower thanks to 4 Campon water tube boilers, which you deploy their power by 2 geared steam turbines to 2 shafts, giving her a top speed of 39 knots and a range of 3,600 nautical miles at 14 knots. Now, this means she's rather short range, I'd argue, for a Pacific destroyer, but I still think she's pretty good and pretty balanced. With 4 single 120mm Type 3 guns, or 4.7-inch guns, 3 twin 21-inch torpedo tubes set up in arrangements, and capability of carrying 20 mines. So she carried her torpedoes tubes in kind of an interesting arrangement, in that one was centerline and forward and going to fire either side, and the other 2 were mounted back separately so they could be canted out and could sort of do their cover. So this gave her a very interesting profile when it comes to torpedo operations. I think this was a good start. I think a lot of the problems you have with Japanese destroyers don't come from their start in the 1920s, which I would argue is a good start. I think it comes from some of the ideas they adopted in the 1930s, which I would say take their destroyers off to a bad sort of place. So that's awesome. Did they? I'm presuming this is for the previous U.S. Navy tanker. Did they get tracer or HE rounds for torpedo boats? They got HE. I don't think they got tracer. Hello, Potato Peon. Hello. Kilo 19. Hello. Turning 343. Yeah, but Navy is the government. You can't trust the government. Best to arm your precious Yeah, oil yourselves with some good old 5-inch plug. Yeah. Is that rocket-propelled AA on its bow? Now, that particular picture is taken in 1945 after she has been doing all sorts of things for the Japanese Navy as a training ship. Now, I think on her bow that might well be one of their rocket-propelled anti-aircraft systems, but I'm not 100% sure because I can't find anywhere confirmation of that. Anonymous, hello. Training school for the Suicide Plane Squadron was approved limitor. Sadly, all their best pilots were lost in training. Very bad joke, but I can understand it. Incal, why do you need a target vessel for suicide flights? To try and train them so they understand how the ships can dodge. Cosmonauts, 39 knots. Wow. Yeah, they were fast. Tuna 101. Also, why does she look like 40 taut Terra Kitakami? There might be your answer there. Where did they get the Kitakami design from? Jevia, favorite Italian ship launched in 1920. Francesco Canacolo. Almost Italy's first battleship or aircraft carrier. Stan Freeman, it sounds weird, but I'm playing catch up with you on 2 different screens, watching the bit about Bilgepumps's condition and the live. Oh. Oh, well, you see, the reason, Dan, I'm suggesting the what ifs for you, the historical stuff for years and Bilgepumps is because if you, of course, suggested your what if scenarios, we could wind up poor Jamie with a what if scenario. It is always fun to wind him up with those. Happy Christmas, Jamie. I know you're watching. Nick Ashwell Rice, the number of Google searches for Japanese rocket AA just shut up. I know, it looks like a rocket AA system, but I haven't really done enough work on Japanese rocket AA to be sure. It might just be, I don't know what, on that. There are all sorts of options it could be genetically, but rocket AA would seem to be the most sensible idea. The original Sawakaze's original gun setup was for original setup was 4 single 4.7-inch Type 3 guns, so that was they were a fairly decent mount. And what if the RN had gone with bigger hand decks and sacrificed the armor box hanger? We could always ask that and watch, Jamie. Matt Day, would less range be more acceptable to the IJN as it was one Ocean Navy? Arguably, yes, but still they're dealing with the Pacific, so you need pretty decent range. I would argue that's the Achilles heel of their class, is their range. You either need a lot of tankers, or you need to fill them up more. You need to have them have bigger range. Thank you, John the Recluse. Thank you. Do you know what Nick Ashroyce. Hood had rockets, AA. Nelson had them. Let's put it this way. It was uselessly ineffective other than being fireworks. Yeah, and we're now in May, and you will notice this is a twofer, this one. We have both Hood and RMS Lancanstria. Both were both born in this month. Actually, another interesting 1920 Italian ship was the Flotilla Leader Falco. Ordered for Romania, put in service with the Italians, and ended up in the nationalist Spanish Navy. Decent. Thank you, John. Thank you, John, for the Iron Bruce resupply. Yes. Now it's Hood and Lancaster, and I thought putting these two ships up. Technically, the RMS Lancaster is launched as the RMS Tyrrhenia. Tyrrhenia. We can leave that to one side. But those two ships enter service same month, same year, in May 1920. I thought that was rather cool. John Recluse, do you play historical simulations? Occasionally, in some various wargaming scenarios and some computer games. I'm on World of Warships when I get the time with editing. Shomak, here is how to wind up Jamie. Ask him, what if the Iron adopted a good fighter instead of the Fulmar? That's cruel. That's not winding Jamie up. That's torturing the poor man. I like it, but, you know, I only do it to him once a year. Mm-hmm. Animals. I never studied IJN ASW. I guess the IJN had nothing like the Hedgehog naval mortar. Well, again, it's going to sound strange going back, but that doesn't look like that sort of system to me because naval mortars tend to be fairly heavy. But we'll see. $15 plus 8. That's 23. So. Turning 343. What warships is not a simulation. It depends on how you're playing it. But I agree, it's not really a simulation. I mainly, I sort of consider it in historical simulations because it's, well, I do get to blow things up quite a lot when I do get on it. And it's the closest thing to one that you can play alone, if that makes sense. You can do that alone, or you can run the system on the computer. Nighthand Productions. Research from the Hood Association suggests that Hood's underwater paint scheme was not anti-fouling red, but was in fact anti-fouling grey in 1941. Thoughts? Seems a rather unique thing if true. There's always a chance it's true. They do have anti-fouling grey, so the case is, if that's what they when they needed to do the fouling paint, if that's what they had, if they had more of that available, they'd have used it, because you buying the paint, you're not. This is going to sound terrible, but you paint what you have available with anti-fouling paint when you need to do it in wartime. And honest, so I can safely assume IJN ASW sucked, right? It had good ideas and good moments. But as a whole, you would be correct. But I do always emphasize it did have good ideas and good moments. Right, so HMS Hood and RMS Lancanstria. Let's consider them for starters. Hood cost £6,025,000 to build. She was ordered in 1916. She was laid down in 1916. So she was ordered in April 1916. She wasn't laid down till 5 months later in September 1916. She's launched August 1918, so less than 2 years later, and is commissioned in May 1920. So all in all, you can say she takes 3 years and 8 months to build, to go from laying down to commissioning, and 4 years and 1 month to go from being ordered to being in service. There aren't many nations in that period who could do that with such a large ship. Her motto, Vetinis Secundus, with favourable winds. And, of course, she sunk during the Battle of Denmark Strait in May 1941. Why is this ship special? Well, it has one of my mum's favourite birds as its actual symbol, a Cornish chough bearing an anchor facing left over the date 1859 is its badge, and Cornish chough is a pretty cool little bird. Now, as built, she is armed with 8 15-inch guns in 4 twin mounts, 12 single 5.5-inch guns, 4 single 4-inch guns for AA work, and 6 21-inch torpedo tubes. By 1941, when she sunk, she still has her 8 15-inch guns in 4 twin mounts. She now has 7 twin 4-inch AA guns, 3 octuple 2-pounder AA, that's 40mm AA guns, 5 quadruple 0.5-inch machine gun mounts for AA work, and 5 20-barrel unrotated projectile mounts, and still has 2 twin torpedo tubes. Okay. What's interesting is, in 1920, her top speed is 32 knots. In 1941, it's 30 knots. In 1931, her range is 5,332 nautical miles at 20 knots, which is very, very decent. Her complement in 1919, or when she entered service in 1920, is 1,433. In 1934, it's 1,325. And the fact is, by the time she gets sunk, she already does have radar fitted. Doesn't always work, but she has it fitted. In contrast, RMS Lancanstria. Well, let's see. She's built as Tyrrhenia, which is the name she has till 1924. She's named for that place in central Italy. And her nickname under her original name was the Old Soup Tureen. She sunk in 1940 off St. Nazaire. She's launched in 1920. Her maiden voyage is June 1922, and she's out of service in 1940. Her top speed is 16.5 knots. She can carry 1,300 passengers. She has 3 cargo holds with 438,000 cubic feet of grain capacity, or 400,000 of bale capacity, 29,000 cubic feet of refrigerated capacity, and a crew of 300. She gets all this from 16 turbines, providing 2,500, and this is always the fun, NHP. Which is a version of, I think, mechanical horsepower. Both are good ships which have their lives cut short by war. And a back. Right, let's see. Nicholas. And that's, I said that one. Nick Ashwell Rice. War Thunder Naval Realistic is much more better simulator. I used to love World Warships, but barely touch it now. I have to say, out of the two, I find World of Warships easier to jump into solo. If I have friends, I would probably try War Thunder, but I prefer to go into that with a group of friends when I'm doing that. Decision, I think US Mark 14 torpedo might have something to do with poor Japanese ASW. Yeah. Monday, funny Cunard ad from the 30s says Lancaster is having the best fish and chip shop in the fleet in tourist class. Nice to know. Damn him, I need to tidy my house and sort out presents, and I'm sure there's more things. Really? I have put up the lights and all these things. Honestly, sometimes when we do a really, really big family Christmas and have all the family around, we also invite any sort of friends who are alone for Christmas. And this year we can't do anything like that. It's one of the reasons why we have so many lights to the front and all these things, because we're used to being a sort of beacon house in our own phraseologies. It's going to be quite strange having just us here. .23.434. Everyone had trouble there so going into the war. Hydrophone was hyped up as much as Bomber Command. Ooh, yeah. Anyone think that bombers and hydrophones are both used to justify cuts in things? Or rather, not spending money? Nicholas, was Lancaster a notable ship at the time, or just another like a bunch of others? She was fairly notable. And But she's also a rather good illustration of what the ships at the time, most of them, look like. So she's notable, but she's also typical. She's cute. Tiamang, I'm still very reluctant to call her a battlecruiser. Well, she's got cruiser framing more than battleship framing, so she's on the battle cruiser spectrum. She's more towards the cruiser end, definitely. And as I said, when I'm talking about battle cruisers, and I think I'm going to re-record, do another version of the introduction. I'm better with the technology than the previous one, and talk about how they were a battle cruiser spectrum again. Daniel Phillips, it's almost a shame Hood wasn't converted to a carrier. I think she would have done well with Arc Raw style build. I would say I would prefer, if my theory has always been, if the Admiral class had been built, and when I say the Admiral class, I reckon if Anson and Howe hadn't been cancelled when they were, and especially if Rodney had carried on, if all three of those had been, but I think those three could have been converted rather than Courageous, Glorious, and Furious. And so you could have had the three Admiral class aircraft carriers as the cornerstone of your fleet. And that would have been really kind of interesting, having Anson, Howe, and Rodney as your first generation prime carriers in the Royal Navy. You couldn't have had three more prestigious names chosen for it, really, at the time. Carl Harmon. Is it Carl Harmon? No. Jennifer, would it be appropriate to say she was chuffed to bits? Mm-hmm. Wang, is Vanguard anyway inspired by Hood? I would say they have used some ideas from the bow and the hull. In-car, main criticism of octopus pom-poms is, do you have 8 barrels pointing at one air target? Yes, but that's also a good way of disintegrating one target and making sure it's taken out at range. Nigoros, not sure how her cost compares to Renown Repulse. 1.5? If you have 2 Admirals or 3 Renowns, which would you have? Well, let's put it this way. I have 1 Admiral and I have 2 Renowns. If I could have had 2 Admirals as aircraft carriers and 2 Admirals as battle cruisers, I would have had that quite happily over the 2 Renowns, because that's going to mean 4 ships which have the same engineering plant and same stuff for me to maintain and keep going. Carmen, if you want, we can do some more Thunder on Saturday. I think you're talking about Boxing Day, and possibly. Depends. I'll update Discord if I'm going to be free. I might be doing family stuff. Nick Orders, violence now. If we can get some time machines, we know where to go for the best fish and chips. They weren't joking about that. If I remember correctly, the story behind it was they won an actual international award. One of the first international cruise liner awards was actually for the quality of the fish and chips. Ram Razorback, this is off topic, but can someone recommend stories of ships that survived only because the universe wanted to? HMS Eskimo, HMS Nubian, Warspite in Norway. Warspite in Norway keeps getting torpedoes fired at her, and the Germans, our German U-boat captain is going, "I hit her!" And they're coming back to Donitz going, "We hit Warspite and it didn't go off." And Donitz is going to the scientists and engineers, "What in the name of all things holy?" Warspite has plot armor. Better than any steel. Hmm. Sadron. Hood just makes me wish we went full Fisher and Doctrine and built the incomparable. If we built the incomparable, she would definitely have ended up an aircraft carrier. The US, that would have been the only way they'd have let us still survive a treaty. Ian Card, no, Admiral Class HMS Nelson. No, originally it wasn't part of the original 4. Admiral Teal Fluff. So you build a Nelson, a free Admiral Class CV. So what names the Nelson and KGV ships get? Go for next down the list. That's all you do. Very cool, Stafford. The war ending when it did. Yeah. Now, we've seen complete rebuild concepts for Hood, but has anyone made a middle ground option? Of course, no one knew how long the war would go on, but if someone had foreseen the war ending when it did, could we have simply seen Hood having machinery replacement and beefed up air as a taunt and complete rebuild? Potentially. But again, as said by someone else, she would have had to survive Denmark Strait. But the interesting thing is, again, if Hood had had sisters, they would probably have been upgraded a lot earlier because you could do a lot more with the hull. Tian Wang, incomparable is totally unrealistic. Actually, pretty much the only ones who could build incomparable in that particular period in 1918 was the British, who had the worked up industry. And remember, this is a worked up industry, which, as we were talking about the other day, has been going since 1889. That was the whole point of the 1889 Act. It was to start building up the British shipyards, helped by an economic boom, which allowed more merchant ships to be built. But that was the whole point of it. So, you're talking 21 plus 19, 40 odd years of build up to get to the point you could build it. Yeah, they could have done it. It would have been interesting, but they could have been built. Nick Gordos, if I'm right, the Hood was longer by quite a bit than the previous battlecruisers. Did that mean longer, deeper docks and dredging? Not really. Longer ones, yes, but again, she could fit in most of them quite happily. And deeper dredging, not always necessary, depending on how she was loaded. Matt Day, would 2 Admiral battlecruisers and 2 carriers also make a good battle group for the Pacific? Yeah. That group stationed at Singapore in the early 40s would have been a nightmare for anyone to deal with. If that had been your 4C format, especially if those had been upgraded with AA and the aircraft carriers were as capable as they could be, and let's be honest, they'd be quite big, so they probably wouldn't be sent in the Mediterranean. Yeah, that would be a nightmare for anyone to deal with. Jeff Beeler, wouldn't Admiral class carriers have the same total tonnage issues as Lexington under the Washington Treaty limits? Jeff, as we've been mentioned before, the treaty limits, the tonnage ones in the Washington Treaty, were largely set by the Royal Navy with reference for how much they felt they needed to turn Glorious and Courageous into decent carriers. Which is why they were so bad for Lexington and Saratoga. If the Royal Navy had been turning Admiral-class aircraft as battle cruisers into aircraft carriers, you can guarantee the tonnage would have been greater. So, this is my favorite of all the battleships of the US Navy. And that gets me into trouble, because there are people who go, oh, you should prefer the Dakotas or the Iowas or these ones. Actually, I would have always liked the Tennessee class. Now, partially that is because Tennessee is BB-43. But also because I think these are pound for pound some of the best designed for their periods and some of the most balanced battleships which the US Navy ever built. Now, they're armed with 14-inch guns. In my world, if they could have been armed with 15-inch guns, I think these would be seriously contenders for the best battleships, some of the best battleships of all time. I think, arguably, if these had been armed with 15-inch guns, I doubt the US Navy would have gone with a 16-inch. I think they would have logistically decided to stick with the 15-inch, as would probably the Royal Navy. And you might have had an interesting scenario with the Japanese going for 18-inch and everyone else being on 15-inch going, but why? What are you going for it for? Carmen, my ideal Force Z, 2 Admiral-class battlecruisers, 2 Admiral-class carriers, 2 Renowns, Town-class cruisers, maybe a county, and obviously some destroyers. Probably if you're going for that fast fleet, you're going to need tribals or M-class to keep up with them. Now, USS Tennessee. Was ordered in December 1915, but she wasn't laid down till May 1917. So it took a year and 5 months to get her laid down. She was launched in April 1919, so that's quite good. It only took her a year and 11 months to go from laying down to launching. But she wasn't commissioned till June 1920, which means 3 years and 1 month from laying down to commissioning. She would be decommissioned in February 1947, and finally stricken from the fleet in March 1959. Her normal displacement is 32,000 tons. Her full load, 33,190 tons. Oh no, 33,723 tons. She had an overall length of 190 meters or 624 feet, a beam of 29.69 meters or 97 feet 5 inches, and a draft of 9.19 meters or 30 feet 2 inches. To give you some point of reference, her draft is the equivalent of about 4 of me. A little bit under 4 of me, but not that far off. Babcock and Wilcox boilers, she had 8 of them, providing her with 28,600 shaft horsepower, which powered 2 Westinghouse electric generators to power 4 electric motors to drive 4 propellers, so 4 shafts. So she was electric powered, in that her steam went to generate electricity rather than going into turbines. Top speed 21 knots, range of 8,000 nautical miles at 10 knots, a total crew of 1,000 and good lord, 1,083, of which only 57 were officers. She carried 12 14-inch guns, 14 5-inch guns. The 14-inch guns are in 4 treble mounts. The 5-inch guns are in single mounts. 4 single 3-inch guns and 2 21-inch torpedo tubes. And no, I have no idea why she carried 2 21-inch torpedo tubes. I'm not really sure what good they could do on a ship her size. Tennessee is one of those ships which is kind of interesting. At Pearl Harbor, she gets hit twice. But neither of those bombs actually managed to detonate properly, so they don't destroy her like they did Arizona. The first partially penetrated the roof of turret 3, failing to explode but sending fragments into turret and disabling one of the guns. The second bomb turret hit turret 2's center gun barrel and exploded, sending bomb fragments flying. And one of these fragments actually killed the captain of West Virginia, who had walked out onto the open bridge and was on the ship. That was the ship. Nick was tied up alongside her. They flooded the ship's main magazines to avoid the risk of fires raging aboard and avoid them going off. But by 10:30, the crew had suppressed all the fires of the ships on the ship and had managed to get it going quite well. Tennessee remained trapped by sunken battleships around her until Maryland could be pulled free on the 9th of December. She had been wedged into dock by Oklahoma when she capsized and sank. The keys to which Tennessee had been moored had to be demolished to allow her to be towed out, as the sunken West Virginia had similarly forced her into them. This work was completed by the 16th of December, allowing the ship to be pulled slowly out past West Virginia and Oklahoma. She was then taken into Pearl Harbor Navy Yard for repairs. Their fires had warped her hull plates, damaged seams, and loosened rivets, all of which needed to be repaired before she could get underway for permanent repairs. Once the hull was again watertight and her third turret received a patch cover, she got underway for Puget Sound for permanent repairs on 20th December, in company with Maryland and Pennsylvania. They were escorted back by 4 destroyers and repaired, and they came into service. The thing is about these battleships is they spend most of their war being the mobile gun batteries for amphibious operations and supporting them rather than fighting. T-1, Alex, is 43 your lucky number? No, but, you know, it's a fairly good number. Vision, Tennessee-class rebuild during World War II rivaled interwar battleships in capability except for speed. Great armor, great guns, and great control radar. Yep. Steve M., has there ever been a specific technical rationale given for the USN cage mass? They seem like the answer to a question no one asked. Pretty much that is the question. There is a question. To an extent, it's their rationale for putting in quite a lot of weight up the top, which you sort of go, it's kind of like the Japanese pagoda mass. Simon, Tennessee class, there seems to be a switch in US designs, clipper valves and such. Did RN aid in her design? Seem to be post-Jutland improvements. I do think there were some RN involvement in this one. John on a Cluse, were battleships any real good for shore bombardment after actual landings? Yes, they were quite useful and were used. It's one of the things that the battleships don't just disappear after D-Day because they are still being used by the troops fighting inland. It's a case of, we have come up across an obstacle. We are still in range. Hello! Could we have fire support from the Navy? Here are the coordinates. Yes, we'll stand back. We'll get back further. Okay. We'll get back further. Yes, we're back far enough now. Fire? Yeah. You have come within 100 yards of the target. Continue firing until we say otherwise. Thank you. In the meantime, Germans, after seeing the first one descend and blow up within 100 feet of them, tend to go, you know what? I feel like being elsewhere. How do you guys feel? Do you also agree with being elsewhere? Yes, we all agree with the concept of being elsewhere. That is not here. Oh, good. Good. Thank you. See you later. Bye-bye. We have to go find an appointment. Admiralty Fluff, you wouldn't consider hurling high explosive at your enemy fighting? Sometimes. Right, so we're now up to our Dutch friends. Now, the point about this, the reason I have this here, is because people forget just how good the Dutch Navy was in the interwar years. They had some very, very good submarines and very, very good ships. In this case, K III started her life was laid down in 1915, July 1915, not launched till August 1919, and commissioned in July 1920. So arguably, she's a pre-World War I design. Yet, she's still a very good ship. She's modernized as they go through. She's decommissioned in 1934. And she serves most of her 14 years in commission in the Far East. Basically, her purpose, all 721 tons of her submerged, is to be a mobile minefield, able to move at 16.5 knots on the surface, top speed, or 8.5 knots underwater, which is fairly decent. She has two 18-inch bow torpedo tubes, two 18-inch external traversing torpedo tubes forward of the conning tower, and a single 75mm gun and one 12.7mm machine gun. So she's fairly decent as a mobile minefield, which is her role. And a name you can pronounce, Dr. Clark. Yes, it is a name I can pronounce. I quite like the Dutch subs. Vision. USS concluded post-World War I light armor of X-Lexington class was not an issue due to the loss of British battlecruisers at Jutland being caused by poor anti-flash safeguard in turrets and battle bets. And that was their conclusion, yes. That's a long life for a sub back then. So yes, and you can see why. It's a fairly modern design. It's even by any standards in the 1920s and 30s. Let's be honest, if you're just looking at the outside, if you saw that in a picture and someone told you that was a World War II submarine, you'd go, yeah, I can see it. Maybe not early war, but late war, but they're certainly early war. That would be an acceptable, that would be something you would expect to see. Tuning 343. Dutch subs were very heavily tuned for very long range. So to be able to transit to Dutch Indies or West Indies, yes. And also they were not just long range, but reliable. They put a lot of effort into making sure they were reliable. Nobody in the Kriegsmarine wants to admit it. They stole a lot from the Dutch fleet technologically and design-wise for their U-boat fleet, from electronics to snorkels. Oh yes. In fact, I would argue that it's the Dutch fleet which keep the German designers going in so many ways. And it's one of the really interesting things is, if the Dutch had built the battle cruisers they've been planning, if World War II had stuck off long enough for some of them to enter service, I can guarantee you the Royal Navy would have bent over backwards to either sink them or acquire them rather than let them fall into German hands, because the Dutch battle cruisers would have been freaking decent, especially compared to some of the German ships, which were over-engineered and had all sorts of weird things. So this is July 1920. It also tells you something about the technology in the period, that it does, to an extent, start to stagnate a little. Mm-hmm. But also, there is something else I want you to think about looking at this full-size ship. She has a crew of 29 in a sub which only has space for 20 beds once they fired all the torpedoes, and is 64.41 meters long, 5.6 meters wide, and about the same high. There really isn't a lot of space on that sub. Now, interesting enough, I would argue, sorry, some Oreo went down the wrong tube. And I would say, actually, the Scharnhorst, there's Tianwang, Golden Eagles, but the Scharnhorst were horrid ships, weren't they? The Scharnhorst were probably the better ones. Again, they were the better design. Bismarcks. And everyone knows that some of the Dutch submarine constructors were German, in fact, German France, right? That is true. But also, a lot of them were also very, very good Dutch designers and Dutch engineers. And the German companies were investors to get their hands on those brains. You can go and find it. Actually, to be fair, that picture comes from the Wikipedia page. I have to admit, I do regularly use Wikipedia to try and track down pictures. Sometimes it's Google. Sometimes I do a Google image search. Sometimes I use Wikipedia to check on the publication provisions and see if I'm not going into anyone's copyright material. And now we have RO 13. Now, I'm going to be talking about row 13, which is the Japanese sub, but that's actually a picture of row 15 because there isn't actually a picture of row 13, despite row 13 being the far more interesting sub. It's one of those things. Now, row 13 was originally named submarine number 23 and was a Kaichou type submarine. In fact, of the Kaichou 2 subclass. There were double-hulled medium-sized submarines, and in the case of row 13, she was laid down on the 14th September 1918, launched in 26th August 1919, completed on the 30th September 1920, and commissioned the same day. Row 13, she was renamed Row 13 on the 1st of November 1924, and stricken in the 1st of April 1932, then renamed again Hyacinth number 2 on the 1st of April 1932. Now, so she was stricken and renamed on the same day. She was a fairly decent submarine. They were again were 752 tons surfaced, 1,019 tons submerged. She had Sulzer Mark II diesel engines. She could do 16.5 knots on the surface, 8.5 knots submerged. Had a range of 6,000 nautical miles at 10 knots on the surface, 85 nautical miles at 4 knots submerged. A crew of 43, with 6 18-inch torpedo tubes mounted, 4 on the bow that can be reloaded and 2 external on the upper deck, carrying 10 torpedoes in total. So that's 1 set of reloads for the 4 that can be reloaded. And also 1 3-inch gun. Here is the interesting fact, though. Despite being built by the Kure Naval Arsenal, and despite being one of the best designs the Japanese had at the time, they didn't like testing them below 30 meters. So that was often the depth they went down to. I know, Google has a public domain search option. Bing might do too. Google does, but sometimes I'm not sure I trust it. In that the image is technically, and then when I flash it through YouTube, something comes up. So I tend to be quite careful on them. See, I think German Navy been better off with 5 or 6 Scharnhorst, bigger threat than 2 Bismarcks, and would have spread out the threats and probably kept most of the RN at Scapa. It would certainly have had a big effect on the Royal Navy. Turning 3434. Have you ever had contact with Jamie Cameron from Dutch Marineschappen? I am sure he could help you out with Dutch material. No, not yet, but I would be happy to get in touch with him. I'm very interested at the moment in trying to track down some more detail about the HMS. Hello, Yickers. Ian Carr, how capable the rebuilt Eisenhower been built if ever finished? I think if you'd been doing Scharnhorst with 15-inch guns, that would have been a very capable vessel. Carmen, I trust you use Drax picture collection whenever he lets me. Yes, let's be honest, he would always let you. Drac is one of the nicest, most generous people I know. And we'll see if on Bilgepumps Jamie discusses quite how generous Drac has been in terms of Christmas presents. And everyone blames the Treaty of Versailles for war, but the treaty is why Germany only had 2 heavy battlecruisers. Like most treaties, Versailles is both good and bad. Both good and bad. If you ever meet a treaty that someone says is all good, then they're probably lying. Yeah, Woodall, happy Treaty Again Day, Dr. Clark. Thank you. Now, guess what I'm going to be talking about now? Yes, it's one of the ubiquitous Clemson class destroyers, the 4 stackers. Now, here's the thing. If anything's like the Arleigh Burke class, i.e. they couldn't stop building them, it's the Clemson class. Mainly because they plan 162, they complete 156, they only counted 6, and 20 were lost during war in war operations. They're just massive. And Norfolk Naval Shipyard, Bath Iron Works, Mary Island Naval Shipyard, Bethlehem Shipbuilding Corporation does so many of them. And actually, I think here is one of the things I want to say, and I did really want to mention, sort of talking about this one and talking about this, is that so when you're looking at Clemson class destroyer, you've got so many constructors. You sit there and go, one of the reasons the US Navy can do this is because they are building so many of these ships, but also because so they have so much experience in them, but also because they are made as straightforward in terms of design as they are. It allows you to build lots. It allows you to build them pretty much everywhere. And it's useful. They have 4 4-inch guns. They have a single 3-inch gun. They have some 30 cal machine guns. They have 12 21-inch torpedo tubes. As built, that's pretty darn cool. You know, it could be worse. The USS Pope, of course, takes part in Balikpapan and the Battle of Badung Strait and the Second Battle of Java Sea, where she and HMS Encounter were directed to escort HMS Exeter away from the action. And, of course, she was sunk alongside Exeter on pretty much the 1st of March 1942. So, as you can see, she was commissioned in October 1920 and sunk March 1942. A long career, but not exactly massive either, is it? "21 years and 7 months. Tinwang, how would you fix the KGV class 959? Wet bow issues and accommodate 9 16-inches? I'd go for 9 15-inch, because you have the 15-inch ready to go. Or 16-inch if you feel like taking on Nelson and Rodney. That design. And just continue that on properly. And, well, if you want to fix the wet bow, etc., you have to build it up. And if you're prepared to build it up a bit, you can make it fairly capable if you're not less worried about the weight and displacement. In car, row 13 and 15 sister ships. Yes, they are. Row 13, 14, and 15 were a subclass. Come, my best friend in 2 years' time is going to fly to the UK so we can go to Tankfest for my 21st and for her 18th. I'm going to go to Oslo to do whatever she wants to go do. You're going to Oslo. with a girl for her 18th. Okay, there are very, very many very scary things which can happen in Oslo that are best left in Oslo. There are many places which joke about being the Vegas of Europe. Oslo is the Vegas in Europe. Good luck, my friend. Samuel, Bethlehem Shipbuilding. Yes, Bethlehem Steel had a shipbuilding corporation, and they did a whole lot of work, and were one of the major ship constructors of the US. Sherlock, weren't problem with the Clemson's number that so much of them were ordered in private shipyards and just couldn't be cancelled out? It was a substantial financial loss. It wasn't the financial loss which worried most of the politicians about cancelling them. No. It was the political loss of cancelling them. After all, unemployment, especially in the 1920s, boom, which have boom and bust going on. Hello, Daniel. Right, major navies from after World War I experimented with large subs. Many were flops, even RM with submarines HMS X1 and serves from 1925 to 1935. Yes, and in 2025, when we're 100 years from then, we will be talking about her. Old Richard, Pope's executive officer, won the Medal of Honor as an appearance of a president of war. Cool. Ian Carr, what difference between Clemson and Town class destroyers? Well, the Town class is pretty much what we call them once they're in the service with us. And the RN makes a few changes, but nothing too dramatic. Nothing too dramatic, he says. Basically, they find some of the American stylings of the ship problematic that they want to fix. Especially for some reason, they have something against the US, the American showers. They think they're too low pressure, I think, is one of the comments which comes through. Kind of interesting scenario to have. Royal Navy complaining about American showers. Calm, that sounds so wrong. Mate, just two scouts doing scout things, probably. Take it from someone who hangs out with a lot of scouts. That can be even more dangerous. There are so many. Let's see. Hot springs you can wander to. That there are so many very random things you can end up doing in Oslo. Good luck, Carl. You'll have fun. Jess B, hello. Anonymous, take a bath is US slang for investment gone bad. No, take a bath is usually what one says to one's girlfriend or spouse or a significant other when they've had a bad day in the UK. Go take a bath, or I'll run you a bath. Shomak, that can't be right. The spreading out of employment to ensure support was developed by the evil military-industrial complex after World War II, so they could sell all the honest politicians, steal the honest politicians' money. I know you're being a sarcastic, Sean. So, yeah, of course. Right then, Nagato or Nagato. Now, again, one of my favorite of the battleships, and also one of the ones which gets overlooked quite so often. And again, I do apologize, but this was the picture of her in 1920. Yes, it's the first one on Wikipedia, but it's also the picture of her from the 30th September 1920. So that kind of seemed appropriate when she's commissioned in November 1920, and we're talking about 1920. She was sunk, of course, as part of Operation Crossroads, but served as the flagship of Admiral Isoko Yamamoto during the attack on Pearl Harbor. She participated in Midway in June 1942, but did not see combat. Other than that, for spending most of the first 2 years of the Pacific War training in her waters. She's transferred to Truk in mid-1943, but again did not see combat until the Battle of the Philippine Sea, and when she's attacked by American aircraft, and didn't manage to fire her main armament against enemy vessels until the Battle of Leyte Gulf in October that year. Lightly damaged during that battle and returns to Japan the following month. And basically, she's then converted to an anti-aircraft platform and assigned to coastal defense duties because Japan's the IJN's running out of fuel and they cannot do much. They cannot actually get it wrong. She's attacked in July 1945 as part of the American campaign to try and destroy the last capital ships, but was only slightly damaged and went on to be the only Japanese battleship to survive World War II. That is until she's done with nuclear weapons tests, when she survives again the first test with little damage, but is sunk by the second. She's laid down in August 1917. She's launched November 1919. She is completed in November 1920, commissioned November 1920, and stricken in September 1945. She is still a diveable wreck, though personally myself, I wouldn't be wanting to get too close to her because, frankly, I'd be worried about radiation. Even though people tell me it's safe in water, I prefer not to try and test it by getting too close to where they did Operation Crossroads. She had 80,000 shaft horsepower thanks to 4 steam turbines and 21 water tube boilers, powering 4 shafts for a top speed of 26.5 knots and a range of 5,500 nautical miles at 16 knots. So, okay, but again, it's quite short-ranged when you think about the Pacific. The 4 twin 16-inch guns, always nice. The 8 single 5.5-inch guns for general-purpose AA duties, not so sure about. Neither am I too sure about the single 76mm or 3-inch AA guns. Well, they carried. Basically, it's a well-proportioned ship. It's what you'd expect for roughly 32,720 tons, but it's not exactly spectacular either. Honestly, doesn't get enough love, though. In that, I would have been I have to admit, if I had been one of the Americans wandering around the world, I'd have been far more worried about coming up against her than I would possibly against Yamato, because whilst Yamato is good on paper, she's good in reality. Take care, old Richard. Merry Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas to your family. Yeah, a very nice looking ship, very good main armor, but as far as I recall, was somewhat lightly armored by comparison to her contemporaries. She's okay, but to an extent, her armor is supposed to be her guns. Definitely not. She has a very good internal subdivision, though, so she's sort of, how do I put it, the reverse of a battle cruiser, in that all her armor is on her surface, and the internals nice open spaces because it's cruiser design hull and cruiser framed hull, whereas she's a battleship framed hull, certainly, and her armor is sort of layered into her. So, yeah. Vision, in Tora, Nagato is ironically the one battleship which is fully mocked up to scale. USBVs were a few large sets and large models. Japanese built it on the shore for film. Oh, cool. Anos, was any of the Japanese fleet still coal-fired models? Because Japan does have coal. Sadly, no. But you are right; it would have gotten part around some of their fuel shortage. Though again, they don't have. They do have some good coal, but they also have a lot more not so good coal. So they're kind of like Germany in World War One. Vision, US should have turned her into a war trophy museum in Annapolis. Would have been quite cool to have her there. I think there is one of the reasons why Nagato and Fuso don't get used so much in World War II is that they don't want to lose them. They're quite big status ships and quite important ships in term. Plus, the thing is, if this is operating for a part of the war as Yamato's flagship, and let's be honest, if he was aboard her, he probably wouldn't have been lost, unlike when he was in a plane. Then are you going to send him into the battles? You don't want to, so his flagship will tend to not be going into the battles. It's a nice ship. It's a good ship. But it had the issue of, frankly, not being in the right place at the right time for it to do well. It's one of the interesting things. I think if Nagato had been involved in, let's say, the Surinder Straits or various other battles like that, it could have been an interesting effect on them. But it also does make a point, it's part of there for the defense of the homelands. That is part of its role. And you also have to remember the Japanese do this very daring operation in terms of Pearl Harbor, but they are actually incredibly conservative when it comes to their strategic outlook. You can see this by the way they do handle the war. Whereas you're almost decided if you're going to do Pearl Harbor. If you're going to do Pearl Harbor, then you need to go all out and do something even more. Danny Wright. Japanese did build some of their ASW escorts to use coal instead of oil late in World War II. Oh, that would make sense, but again, I wouldn't really want to use a coal ship for anti-submarine warfare. They tend to be noisy as anything. Coal tends to be noisier than oil, mainly because of all the scraping and moving about. O220. That's gone the wrong way. Bum. Bum. Yay. RMS Scythia, the last one of the list. 022200. So, I picked this one out because A, Scythia is cute, and we will talk about her a bit, but also, that picture includes the 3 Graces from Liverpool, and that's always a nice thing to have. She actually survived and served a long, long time. She was served from 1920 to 1958, so she served 38 years. Her record was only surpassed in 2005 by Queen Elizabeth II. RMS Queen Elizabeth II. She was an intermediate liner, 19,000 gross registered tons, rather than large liners Cunard had previously employed. And basically, Cunard embarked on this program post World War I because they lost so many ships during World War I. And she was built for services between Liverpool and Queenstown to New York and Boston. Designed hopefully to appeal to American tourists. She also, in the mid-1920s, starts doing the routes between New York and the Mediterranean. She became troop ship in the 1st of November 1940, sailing from Liverpool to Middle East carrying the 1st King's Dragoon Guards. She then saw service carrying evacuees from Liverpool to New York. In 1942, Scythia took part in the Allied invasion of French North Africa. That's Operation Torch. And 23rd November, she was struck by an aerial torpedo, but her crew managed to get out of harbour in Algiers and suffered only 5 casualties out of a complement of 4,300 personnel she had aboard. From January 1943 onwards, she's repaired in New York and then takes part in ferrying American troops to Europe. At the end of the war, she took many of the US troops back from Europe, many accompanied by their new brides. And she was also a war bride ship taking Canadian war brides and their children from Liverpool to Pier 21 in Halifax in early 1946. One of her last missions as a true ship was actually to bring home the 1st King's Dragoon Guards, who she'd taken out to the Middle East in 1940. She brought them home in 1948. In 1948, she was also handed over to the International Refugee Organization to take refugees from Europe to Canada. And in 1950, she finally became a passenger ship, again, sailing from Britain to Canada and later to New York. But in 1957, she was used to transport Hungarian refugees to Canada. And her final route was around the North Sea in 1958 after 37 years of service. She was 19,761 gross registered tons, and her cargo capacity was 11,927 net registered tons. She had steam turbines with double reduction gears, top speed of 16 knots, could carry 350 people in first class, 350 in second class, and 1,500 in third class. So that's about 2,200 accommodations. And yeah, crew is not that massive. She was a good ship. And as I said, she's a picture next to the Three Graces, so that makes good. Actually, Operation Crossroads is such a sad affair somehow. All the old junk piled together, being used as food for nuke tests, going down together, laying next to each other. See what? Good idea. Nagato instead of Fuso and Yashima at Surago Strait. Be an interesting fight. But that was Japanese diversion outside the Yamato Nagato is the best Japanese battleships. Potentially, yes. Incal, lots of RMSs about. Well, I thought it might be nice to do some liners because you have to remember that nations are seeking status, especially in all these periods. And just as much as a battleship or a cruiser is a status symbol, so is a liner. And especially when they're your premier liners. Britain has a few, but Cunard are the really big ones and the really important ones. The Kato one, you have to have a very well-grounded confidence in your ability to maintain supplies if you decide to run your navy on a fuel type that is not indigenous. Were power stokers ever trialed by any navy? Not really. Some navies tried them out early, but they tend to be not that great of systems. And they did everything they could to screw up. They don't understand logic behind Midway either. Yamato the genius was more myth than reality. Turned strategy upside down, that clown. Actually, okay. Yamato, I will actually defend far more than I would ever defend Robert E. Lee or someone like that, because Robert E. Lee really wasn't a genius. Really wasn't. Yamato wasn't a genius, but he wasn't that bad either. He was in a situation which was terrible, and he was trying to fight it the best he could. And you would have had enough problems if you'd had the IJN and the IJA actually managed to work together properly. With the way the relationship between them, the fact that the Japanese managed to keep the war going as long as they could is really rather amazing. Honestly, let's be honest. The real enemy for the IJN was never the USN or the RN. It was the IJA, and the real enemy for the IJA was never the American Army or the British Army. It was the IJN. It's a non-stop thing. So you have to remember that when you're dealing with Japan, when you're dealing with all these things and looking at it, you have to think about it like that. So, Thompson, do you see a return to these type of liners after this trying year? With lots of liners being scrapped now, smaller, faster, with more runs through a coup de loss would make sense to me. You see, you have two types of passenger ships. You do have a very few liners, but they don't really carry goods as well as people. They're all about people. And cruise liners are really far more about cruising than they are about line. And actually, most of the ones that are going seem to be the very small or the very large ones. But the very large ones, because they're very expensive to run. The very small ones, because they're not as cost effective. Unless they're a sort of niche role. I think you probably will be seeing the medium size and the status ones. It's kind of like Concorde. You would have a downturn in the rest of the market, but Concorde would always be full. And I always remember the advertising campaign for Concorde when they worried about trying to work out how to make it pay for itself because it wasn't costing money. They sent a note out to people who were flying, and asked them how much they thought they were paying for it. And these people all sent in their estimates, etc., because they didn't realize, because it was all booked for them, because it was company flying them, and it was a status to send your people on Concorde, and they were all estimating the price was about 4 to 5 times the cost that it actually was. And the first advice from one of the people was that, oh, we should tell them how cheap it really is to fly Concorde. And they went, no, we're already full. What we're going to do is treble our prices. We'll soon be making a profit, and they'll still be paying less than they think they are. And it worked. Concorde was in profit. John the Recluse. It was the Doolittle raid that deceived the Japanese that home islands were in range of Midway, from what I'm told. There is always that idea, but in many ways, the Doolittle raid more convinced the Japanese that they were facing problems. Let's see. 0234. So 1920 is a very interesting year. For so much of what happens. And so many ships. But not really that many ships as well. Hello, not sure what happened then. It decided to terminate itself. I was asking, good evening, just finished off our traditional Christmas Eve dinner. Enjoy. Nice. I had my not traditional Christmas Eve dinner, which was a pizza shaped like a Christmas tree. In-car, UK and no indigenous oil supplies. No, but we could get oil from Canada and we could get oil from the Middle East. That's what we had multiple sources of oil lined up. Anna, Stoda instead of Dragon was certainly better. I don't regard it as a strategic shipperel. I would say it makes and it has an impact because of look at the people it's got rid of. And it's not just the... It's going to sound strange. That impact might not be that massive, but it's an ongoing long-term thing from the 1930s. So you're about 15 years into it. There are all sorts of things have happened. All sorts of useful people have been got rid of. People who would be people who are less useful have managed to survive. It's one of those things. It's had a lot of impacts it's death of 1,000 cuts in many ways. Yes, the insane and soda rivalry. Well, it's just criminal how they sabotage each other. Yeah. It did cut off, but then came back. It decided I had overloaded it because I'd shut down the image slideshow. Still no fluffy research assistant, though. Hey, not a moment. Maybe after Christmas. At the moment, they're downstairs having a look at the Christmas lights and the Christmas trees and having another lesson from Mum about not tacking on to the Christmas trees. Now, we've had some interesting in the suggestions for January, and I'm going to put these to a vote. And the vote will be done by, let's see, today's the 24th, so I will have this to the 31st of December. I'll make it go live today. But the topics are going to be the Battle of New Orleans, because Dan Freeman has made that suggestion, and it's a pretty darn cool one. So I'm going to go with it. And I'm also going to go with... Ooh. I'm tempted by Ian Carr's what if the 3 US fleet carriers had been present at Pearl Harbor, but could be an interesting one to put forward. Jeff Beeler has put forward Royal Navy anti-piracy operations between wars, with an emphasis on carrier operations in the interwar period, so China Station. Maximilian Herbert, I'm liking the Dutch World War II destroyers and their patrons. As you know, I do like the Dutch Navy. Tonight's one, so that one's going in there. And I think I'm going to go for Bale and Aura's Cherry Trees, and that's 5. And number 6 will be... I think we're going to look at the the operations of the East Indies Fleet. I think I'll put that in there. The real and planned operations of the East Indies Fleet in 1945. So that's the 6 options which will be coming live later this evening. And I'm going to answer questions for another 15 minutes, but I am also going to quickly, because I've been sitting here for quite a while, go and find the facilities because I've drained most of a bottle of Iron Brew. Back in a second. Yeah. Let's see. So, no fan of Lee. I'd love to hear your argument. So, my argument with Robert E. Lee is that he was usually faced by really, really bad Union generals. I would argue that the only side served were less ably than the Confederates by most of their generals in the American Civil War was the Unions. In fact, in many wars. In that, Ely seems to face regularly the generals who, frankly, Nighttime Production, just a quick odd question on Bomber Command in the Pacific. Is there actually anywhere to put those RAF squadrons on the Marionette airfields that existed in 1945? Or were new ones under construction? New ones would have had to be constructed. New ones. Merry Christmas, Nighttime Productions. Mm-hmm. Alice, yes, British veterans fresh from kicking Napoleon land in New Orleans. The war was already over. Their victory was glorious, but meaningless. It could be an interesting one. King's Rook. You don't just have to remember. I don't just use the patron ones. Patrons do get differences. The patron suggestions automatically go to a vote, and the patrons get to choose them. The suggestions on Discord and YouTube are subject to the whims and wills of a. I would like to consider myself a mildly benevolent dictator. Mildly benevolent dictator. That is what any academic lecturer is. A mildly benevolent dictator. Broadly speaking, benevolent as long as it doesn't create extra paperwork. Then we can be draconian as anything if it creates more paperwork. Ian Carr, was there a formal RN policy on naming turrets? A full turret shape seems to be A, B, X, and Y. However, Agincourt turrets 7 were named after days of the week, starting from the bow was Sunday. There are conventions, but there is also the fact that there are realities. In that, if it doesn't work, you see, if you have 4 turrets, Alpha, Bravo, X-Ray, and Yankee work very, very nice. If you have more than 4 turrets, you then have to start coming up with different scenarios for them. Animals. Best generals at 1816 defected rebels. No. I would argue the best general didn't. I'd argue 3 of the best generals didn't. I'm Rosecrans, Grant, and Sherman. And I would put them in the order of probably Ooh. Those three, I tend to move around the order of them in terms of which one I think is my best. So, Grant, Sherman, Sheridan, pretty good in it. Thomas was one of the best. Definitely, Thomas is one of my favorites. Take care, Seth Thompson. Oh. Touche on the Robert Lee affair. When all he faced were 9-10 third raters in every respect. Even I scratch my head when I look at some of those battle maps. Yeah, he does have fun. So he went. Also, two generals from Virginia. The best one went with the North to the Shaman Sisters. The Rocker Chickamauga, George Thomas. Yeah, as I mentioned, Thomas was one of the best generals of the war, but he really wasn't good for the Supreme Command because he wasn't that good at dealing with politics. John the Recluse. Dictator is Latin and used to infer temporal powers on a leader in times of great distress. I know. I'm not sure why, but the joyous thing that is YouTube appears to be blocking the NORAD center. Not sure why. Michael Trutt, if Rosecrans wasn't so good, why doesn't name come up more often? Mainly because by the time anyone noticed him, Grant and Sherman were already there. Thomas was there, and also he gets forgotten. He's one of those ones. He's fighting in. He's fighting elsewhere. He's not fighting on the main scene, and he does really, really well. Yeah, goes, well, Dr. Clark, off for some social distance driveway gift exchange. I have to miss the ending live. Take care. I won't be going on for much longer. You're not going to miss much, are you? Because it's about another 5 minutes. Vision, I have him in Libya. Okay. Decision. A purpose nothing. If you could ditch the Nelson's torpedo capability for the same weight, space, and additional power plant capacity, is it worthwhile? If I could ditch the torpedoes for more power plant and, I don't know, move one of the turrets aft, yeah, that'd be useful. But for sure, Sheridan was a big deal, and mostly being forgotten about. Sheridan was quite decent. Bruce Marino, hello. I can't see it well, but the object of the Sawakaze's bow may be one of Japan's rather primitive anti-submarine mortars. Oh, cool. I thought it was a rocket because of its design. I thought it more likely to be rocket-propelled anti-aircraft munitions, but could be. Samuel, what is your opinion of battlecruisers, by the way? Not a fan, seeing as you want to turn the animals into carrots. Let's put it this way. In my ideal world, the Royal Navy would have built 3 admirals as battle cruisers and had them instead of Renown, Repulse, and so had 3 of those, and have been building a class of 7 and have ended up with 4 of those as being aircraft carriers. So the RN would have had 4 very, very good aircraft carriers and 3 fast ships, which would probably be upgraded to fast battleship standard to go with them. And that would have been the core of the Royal Navy worldwide. With hopefully 6 Queen Elizabeths modified to provide fire support wherever they needed to go, and 6 Rs as the protection stations. That would have been my ideal Royal Navy, and add in 6 more aircraft carriers of various sizes, and you'd have a very decent navy for the interwar period, and an incredibly decent navy to build up from World War II into World War II. It's not saying I'm not a fan of them as ships. They were a good design of ships. I don't agree with battle cruisers mainly because if they are on the cruiser end of the spectrum, my theory is they're more aircraft carrier escort and more sort of task force ship for going around the oceans. If they're battleships, they're there to fight a battle. But that's the trouble. Battle cruisers aren't there to fight a battle. They shouldn't have the battle there. They should be just called first-class armored cruisers. Turning 3434, heading for Malta. Mm-hmm. Merry Christmas, everyone. It's a lot of work being Santa. It is a lot of work. Considering I don't like battle cruisers as a concept either. Bombing Rome in a few seconds. It's a tough work being Santa. It is. Right then. I am going to go off and say hi to my family, walk the dog, wave at my buddy as he flies by. Little cousins, you know you need to be good now. Remember, this is the good list, but that doesn't mean I don't have the naughty list somewhere as well. Take care, Kingsrook. Take care, Stephen White and DeCasso and Justice Fusion. Sean Mack, thank you. Shoot Me, thank you. Enjoy Blackburn Day. John Shea, Thomas Van Wel, thank you. John Recluse, thank you. Ambition, Merry Christmas all. Hope you liked the little tree. I will keep it here as long as the Christmas season is going, just to have a little sort of flashing Christmas. Thank you, Osprey28, Earthbone Known, thank you. Grace Sarsky, thank you. Janeth, thank you. Keegan, thank you. And thank you, Thomas Van Der Velde and Dan Freeman, thank you. Dan Freeman, Tata, yeah. Glad the blessings of the Blackburn are upon us all, and hope the vacuum will well. Steve White, Steve M, thank you. Karma Gosford, thank you. William Bolton, hello, nice to see you again. Alzowski, thank you. Merry Christmas. Jennifer, Merry Christmas. And Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you're have a wonderful day tomorrow, or today, depending on your time. I hope you have a lovely time with your family, if you're with them. And if you're not with them, I hope you still manage to have a very good time. And if you are on your own and are feeling lonely, I know there are all sorts of phone lines and things that I should probably be recommending, but I will say this. There is a link down below to Discord. There always seems to be people nice and happy to chat. And if you really are alone, message me, and as long as I'm not eating, I will probably chat back and go, hello, how are you? And I might even send you pictures of the fluffy research assistants dressed up in their Santa outfits for the day. because they do have them. We can all be very worried. Take care, Paul from Chicago, and take care. Thank you very much, everyone. Rick Vasa, thank you. And I hope to see you all again. At the moment, it's going to be a long patrol on the 27th for the Sunday. But I might end up... I'm going to see how I'm feeling. If I'm feeling not too, how do I put this, over full of turkey, you might well find that I do a brew ships on Sunday. I might do one. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Take care. Visiting my turning 3434. I'm alone, but visiting my family. But I think I will be managed visiting my family safely tomorrow. Well, that's good for you, but again, as I said, if anyone fancies, and I'm fairly sure War Thunder or World of Warships, there will be happily be organized games. Or you can join the ultimate game which is going on, which is a version of sort of, how do I put this? Tribal destroyers in a online version of a Dungeons and Dragons for style game going on. It's just amazing. Right, take care, everyone, and thank you. Bye-bye. Merry Christmas.